It is game week with Graham Couch. The vibes are high. How can they stay high through the first month of the season? All that and a lot more. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Well, it's game time. Folks, Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning into Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below on YouTube how Mr. Couch is looking today. I think quite dapper. Graham, it's always great talking to you, but I got to say, it's even better when it is game week, Graham, because here in a few days, we get to talk about substance. We get to talk about actual games, not just, what could happen, which we will get to. You had a very nice best case and worst case scenario piece recently. But before all that, are you like the fan base? Are you just very excited to get this ball rolling here?
Yeah, I get to this point every year, and I am, because the storylines in a new coaching situation change a little bit. But really, since the spring, you're just sort of speculating on possibilities for month after month after month. And you get to a point where readers are ready for the game, fans are ready for the game. You're ready for just to write about something. And that's the best part about the opener.
To just wax poetically here for a hot second, obviously, I'm in a great mood. A lot of State fans are. We're still undefeated. Almost every team is outside of Tallahassee, but nevertheless, I'm happy. I'm eager, and because Graham, even the wins last year, the few wins they had when Harlan Barnett took over, they felt like pulling teeth. Even the wins weren't all that enjoyable, and by and large, no disrespect to the players, they're kind of meaningless wins at that point of the season. Bowl eligibility was long in the rearview mirror, but Friday signals new beginnings. We are all moving back into our dorms, it feels like. We're not sure what's going to happen, but hey, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be something new. Let's all head on this journey together. It is truly a honeymoon phase. So, Graham, the question is, through the first 4 games of the season, every game ahead of the Ohio State game, what has to happen for this honeymoon phase to keep going? Because I think it's just as easy as 3-1. Certainly, not automatic. 2 tough road games coming up, but that's where I see it at right now. Or is there anything else that has to happen inside these games too? What's going to have to go down here to keep the vibes high?
Well, part of it is you just don't know enough about the other teams, right? And that's right. In the new world where everybody gets a new quarterback every year, and there's a lot of change. It's hard to know. Maryland, for example, doesn't have its quarterback situations sorted out. If they're not good at that position, I think they've got some weapons on offense. I think they've got a staff who knows how to use them, but that may not matter. Quarterback matters, right? We've seen that in Michigan State. When you don't have the guy, you're in trouble. So that could maybe an opportunity for Michigan State, or Maryland could be fine there. It's a road game. Maryland, usually when they collapse, it's later in the year. All of a sudden, that's a really tough game. The Boston College, new coaching staff. We'll get a really good feel for them when they play Florida State this weekend. So that'll be helpful in that sense. But they're supposed to be, a 6-6 type team, and that's what Michigan State a lot of people think is going to be. So, and then Florida Atlantic, while they're coming off a 4-8 season, and I tend to think Michigan State will get this done. They do have a coaching staff who knows how to feature guys and knows how to take one great receiver and use them and move guys around, and they have some speed. They've got a quarterback transfer who's mobile as well. So, and those things have bothered Michigan State in the past. So it's not like it's a game where it's a definite walkover.
Right.
And so what I think MSU needs to be is at minimum, solid certain places, solid at receiver, solid up front, and then they need Aiden Childs to be good. And that's what it is. And I think Aiden Childs is going to be a really good quarterback at some point. But I'm also cognizant that he's 18 years old. He doesn't turn 19 until after the second game of the season. And he's never started a college football game. And you can be 6'5" with all the speed and the arm in the world. Winning at quarterback is about making the right decisions, and it's about accuracy. And so those are the two things. How good will he be in those components early on? So I think it starts there. And defensively, I think they're going to be okay defensively. I really do. I mean, I don't think that they're going to be. This isn't 2013, through 15 MSU.
Right.
But I think on the back end and the linebacker, they should be okay. And then up front, they should have enough to be competitive. We'll see.
We will. And speaking of that honeymoon phase, not just with the head coach, but also the offensive coordinator, because we were kicking this around on Twitter the other day. There's a discourse between MSU fans, the Oregon State fans, because they're like, oh, Michigan State fans are going to learn about Brian Lindgren, how awful of an OC he is. And we're sitting over here like, brother, we scored 15.9 points per game last year. The only way to go is up. We are thrilled just to have anyone new in the room. And it seems like that, quite frankly, no one has a better job in America right now than Brian Lindgren, because the bar is set at Earth's core right now. Is that accurate, you think? Do you think he's got just a sensational, cushy job because we're just a starved fan base waiting for any morsel of offensive productivity here?
Well, there were a lot of Jay Johnson fans in 2021. So, I mean, it's
yeah.
I have never met an offensive coordinator who at some point the fan base wasn't frustrated with.
Sure.
I mean, it's sort of, sometimes I think, and look, there are better coordinators than Jay Johnson. There are better coordinators than Dan Rochar. There are better coordinators than Dave Warner. You can go back and back and back, but those guys also, weren't complete rubes, right? I mean, they look at, so what I would say this is like Jonathan Smith, if you go back and read articles in Seattle and Washington in 2015, they weren't happy with him. They
Not
weren't
great.
happy with him. They gave all the other coaches a 2-year contract, and he had to earn it. And Chris Peterson, who was the head coach there at the time, stuck up for him and said, look, I know who he is as a coach. I mean, obviously, they've got to produce, but he's a great coach because of this, and this. The fans wouldn't have thought that. And sometimes we think we should pick a fan to hire the coordinator and then see how that goes. Now, I think Lindgren's a pretty smart guy. I think they run a pretty, I like their offense. I like that it's different. I like that they huddle up. I like that there's a lot of tight end usage. I think in the Big Ten that'll play. They've got a mobile quarterback that, but yeah, he does have a situation where everything is relative to last year. The whole team has that. The staff has that. Last year was misery. It was a disaster. And so this year, I think for people is going to be a lot of fun, even if they're average, because what you need is you'll get joy in small victories, which you can't get when their expectations are high. And you need competence in the coaching staff. And then you need to see signs of promise. And I think they'll get those 3 things, and that'll make it a decent year. And obviously the mood will swing if they can win a big game like at home against Iowa or something like that along the way, coming off a bye in the middle of that gauntlet. If they can perform well at Michigan, if they can have a moment in games that are of some national prominence where people go, oh, look what's happening at Michigan State, even if they don't win it. If they look like they belong on the field for a minute with Ohio State or Oregon and things like that, I think people will enjoy this season. And so from that standpoint, yeah, I think again, just like with the offense, everything's relative to what you're coming off of.
And not to make this a season full of moral victories, but we've thrown this stat around, and I might be on or off by a point here. I'm trying to memorize it. Against Ohio State under Mel Tucker, the average score was 37-4 at halftime. Just look like you belong on the field. Again, this can't be like, a year, like a contract-long thing under Jonathan Smith. It has to get better than just that. But even something as little as that, I think, can be enough to keep the fan base somewhat engaged, energized, and believing that things can happen here. Graham, speaking of the coaching staff, hey, they had media availability this week. I want to see if you got any nuggets of information that we already haven't gotten from fall camp yet. But first, I hate to do this to you. I got to send you to the bench because it's time to talk to people's ears off about Game Time. Yes, the greatest ticketing app out there. You've heard me bark up and down about Game Time. Oh, God, for weeks, if not months. And, well, hey, it's actually almost game time here in East Lansing. If you've used Game Time for concerts, comedy shows, hey, even baseball games in the Detroit area, you are hip to how great this app is. But if it'll be your first time here using it ahead of this Friday's game at Spartan Stadium, you're going to save some money because with their flash deals throughout the week, you're going to find great deals on seats in great locations. Or let's say you're not planning on going to the game, but you wake up Friday, you got the day off work, and you want to skip over to the stadium with no tickets. Well, yep, you got it. You're going to save money anyway with their last-minute ticket deals. Guys, it's game time. There is no fuss about it. They are not going to pop you with surprise fees at the very end. And again, they're going to save you money right off the bat. Download Game Time, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. And hey, guys, Michigan State, we've been saying all up and down on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, that they are 11.5-point favorites. 11.5-point favorites. Well, I got some news for you over there. They've grown to 13.5-point favorite. So if you jump in that 11.5-point line, congratulations, you just got yourself 2 points. But if you're still feeling our Spartans, mosey on over to FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Place a nice fancy wager over there on our Spartans or any week 1 game possible. Lord knows I will be filling my slip with all sorts of bets at America's #1 sports book. And to sweeten this football season, now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, we're going to drag it back out here. It's Graham Couch of the Lansing State Journal, the Couch and the Rube podcast. But first, thanks a lot for making Locked On Spartans your first listen. Go ahead, make Locked On College Football your second listen, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And Graham, another week of media availability, back-to-back days, some coaches, some players. We didn't really get to any quotes yet this week, by and large, because we've already heard everything there possibly is to hear about. The only thing that I was slightly interested in is that Joe Rossi, he was asked who has grown the most this offseason. He named Malik Spencer, as if there was any more room for him to grow, which that's a good sign. And then Chuck Brantley. That's a guy who started in the scrimmages and just to do some self-promotion. Like, that's what we suspected here on the show before the scrimmage even started, because we just don't do, hysterical meltdowns here. We actually do get information and share it with you people. So now that I've patted my own self on the back, Graham, anything that you got this week that we didn't know beforehand that you think people should know?
I am curious to watch how the communication systems work with the new, that new helmets on offense and defense. And one of the things Joe Rossi talked about was he'd rather have none of the green dot helmets than 2, because then you get a penalty. And so that was sort of interesting that sort of the default is not, we don't have one on the field. It's get them all off the field, because you don't want that sort of deal. So I thought that was interesting. I'm trying to think of it. At this point, we've heard a lot. I sat down with Jonathan Smith last Friday, and he was appreciate that. He was pretty forthcoming and sort of you understand why he's taken this job and why he thought this was important. You get the sense that he might have stayed at Oregon State if things hadn't changed there, just because he likes a certain lifestyle and the ability to build at the highest level, and it also makes you think maybe he wouldn't have gone to a place like Washington anyway. He'd been there. Seattle is a different animal than East Lansing. Yep. So, I thought that was interesting. He talked about how little he meddles in the offense too. So this is Brian Lindgren's show when the game's going on. He may have suggestion here or there, things like that. Even though he's an offensive guy. So that is something to keep in mind that I was trying to get a sense of as well.
Now, not just that brilliant piece that you had with Jonathan Smith, which, by the way, Lansing State Journal, of course, everyone already knows that by now, but go ahead over there and read it if you haven't. You also had a best-case scenario and worst-case scenario piece for Michigan State. I think you put the best-case scenario at the season's end, 9-3, and then worst case, I believe it was 4-8. I meant to write that down in my notes, but I'm just going off the top of my head right now. What I do have in my notes is that for the best case scenario, you listed, well, this is how 9-3 happens. If Childs hits the ground running, the offensive line comes into its own, and, a top skill position player isn't just like decent, like is becoming a really, really strong option out there on the field. Of those three, Childs hitting the ground running, offensive line coming into its own, and a top skill position player emerging as like an alpha dog, what is most likely, do you think, to start this year?
It's a great question.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate that.
Nice. I do think I do think Childs being a guy, you know, I mean, I look at the receiving core and I like some of these guys, and I think Nick March obviously will be, but you could even listen to Linger and talk today about him. He's a freshman, and they're hoping to make plays for them, but he is a freshman, and that is a rare. You just don't see a lot of freshman receivers produce consistently. It's a difficult position to do it. The line, you know, I do think there's a chance that they were actually recruiting pretty decently with the line of the previous regime, and that the guys you're seeing up there now who are redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomore, second and third year guys, and that's a good sign because that's probably where the bulk of their talent was. And so maybe that happens, but seeing is believing at this point with that offensive line. It's just been so long, and so to me, it's the unknown with Childs and the idea that he could be a difference maker from day one, and somebody who makes, you know, he'll make some mistakes, but he'll make a lot of good reads. He'll be a problem for teams in the red zone with his legs. He'll extend drives in that sense.
On the contrary, too, you know, the worst case scenario you pointed out, well, Childs needing time, very understandably so, just the team lacking depth altogether, and then also a lack of those different making playmakers. What should scare me the most? Like, why should I be losing sleep this week ahead of kickoff? As if I need any extra help doing that, but just add fuel to this fire, Graham, if you may. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's, you know, it's an 18-year-old quarterback who could be more, at the same reason there's the high end, it could be as mistake prone as he is big play prone. And, you know, not to quote the great Eric Mangini too often, but he, you know, he would always say you lose more games than you win, right? And I think coaches feel that way. And so now if you've got a team like Michigan State that's not going to dominate teams physically probably, or at least the upper part of their schedule, you do need some guys who take chances, who make plays, who do things for you. But that would be it. And then you just have so many toss-up games that we have no idea. I mean, the same conversations are happening around all of those teams too.
Yep.
You know, what could possibly be good? I like the hire that Indiana made with a head coach. Who knows what they get the most out of that season? You know, does Purdue with a chip on their shoulder look a little bit better than we think? Is this actually the year Rutgers takes a step? Maryland can be tough early on. You know, is Iowa just too seasoned for MSU, and that winds up being a 4-game losing streak that just feels really long. And so I think there's a lot. You know, that's where it comes down to. Michigan State's just, you know, a little bit less than a lot of teams it plays, or is a little bit more mistake prone. I think, though, you know, having a guy like Tommy Schuster as a backup quarterback is a really good deal for them, because I think it takes the pressure off a 1 or 2 game injury. You know, the Childs. You know, and I do think there are enough weapons. You know, like I think Nathan Carter is going to be better this year. I think he was dinged up quite a bit last year, and that was just such a dysfunctional offense that he was just the only guy just kind of running into a brick wall all the time. I'd like to see a healthy Nathan Carter with a competent offense.
The kid deserves it. Again, like such a great kid, obviously voted on as a captain by Michigan State. And I also thought this was really neat in your piece too, that of all the guys that were voted on for captain, 25 guys got at least a single vote. A dozen players got double-digit votes. So I think that this is just a really obvious question. Maybe you'll prove me wrong here, but it just seems like the program is in a lot healthier place right now, just with player to player, coach to player. It truly seems like the hard reset underwent a great transformation in this offseason. Is that fair, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different staff, and you got to make that move. You know, you got to get a different type of personality. It's got to be a different type of voice. And there's, you know, the Lamborghini stuff is over. The flash is over. Now, I think Mel Tucker has some substance to him as a coach, and I think there were some good coaches on that staff. But when you have a coach who's fired and you go through that long of a slog, knowing it's going to end with the schedule they played and the way things went, and then the bad decisions at quarterback. I mean, look, Sam Levitt's starting in Arizona State for a reason.
Correct.
I'm a believer in Aiden Childs. But if you told me you've got to put money on one of those two guys to be better, I wouldn't go either way. Like I think
it'll be close.
I think Levitt was the real deal, and so he should have been the guy last year. Once they realized that, you know, at a certain point, maybe that season's different and got a different feel to it. I don't know that he would have stuck around, or it would have. But that offense just couldn't move at the end at all, and we saw that, you know, obviously Penn State being the low light of that.
I swear I'm trying to like stay positive over here, but guys, you just walked through the Sam Levitt thing. Just I'm gritting my teeth over here because they burnt his fourth and final game before the red shirt on what was it, 2 passes. Yeah, great job, guys. That's really high level baseline coaching that we get right there. Gonna stay positive. We're gonna try our very best here. Graham, even though we are staying positive, I got to do something I do not like doing. I got to send you to the bench one more time. And God, it just makes me sick to my stomach. But you know what doesn't make me sick to my stomach, folks? It is 5-Hour Energy. Hey, we got a long day of tailgating up ahead on Friday. Let's say you get started at noon on a nearby golf course. One of my favorite things to do. Okay. You're out there in the sun, you're having a good time. And oh my God, it's 7 o'clock. Kickoff is almost here. And I'm about to pass out right now. Well, go ahead and get yourself some 5-Hour Energy. They need you on third down. Okay. They need you celebrating every single touchdown. Don't just take a 5-Hour Energy for yourself. Take one for the team. And guys, hey, with 0 sugar, it's convenient, it's portable, it's just the perfect thing to throw into your pocket and even walk into the stadium with if you need one for halftime. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore. We're talking watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There is a flavor for everyone, so try them all. And on the site, we'll stock up for the whole season. They give you the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and boom, it is delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy today. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5-Hour Energy today. All right, let's drag him back. Let's see if he's still here, actually. It's Graham Couch at Lansing State Journal, and my goodness gracious, would you look at that handsome gentleman. He came back for another segment, once again being dragged back on this show. Thank you very much, Graham. Look, this is a story that will just never die. It's the Connor Stalions thing, of course. The documentary happens, and what kind of a talking head would I be to just completely gloss over this? No, we're going to spend a little bit of time on it, and I've long said I'm not going to watch a single second of it. It could be the only thing offered on a trans-Pacific flight, and I would just rather stare at a black screen than watch that propaganda, because the Netflix Untold series, their track record is Johnny Manziel, the Florida under Urban Meyer documentaries, and they made Johnny Manziel seem more holy than the Pope and the Florida program to be better than the Vatican. It is propaganda. I don't really care to hear their side. But with that said, you still get 2 morsels of nuggets from this. We've seen the clips on Twitter. Harbaugh gave Stalions a game ball back in 2022. He also says he can't recall being at the CMU game. Cutscene, Dave Portnoy, huge Michigan fan, says he told me he was there, like caught red-handed. So even when the subjects get to tell the whole story on these documentary series, doesn't it seem like they kind of struck out in T-ball? Like how when you get editorial discretion over your documentary, do you just like something like that slip out? Is there any stop to the craziness here?
Yeah, well, they often try to have a couple things that are a little bit negative or, counter what they're saying just to make it look like an actual documentary, because it's not a documentary. I mean, these are not documentaries. I mean,
no,
even the
thank you.
Right. Even The Last Dance, which had a lot of truth to it and some criticism, was not a documentary. That's not documentaries. Right. The subject does not have control of a documentary. This is not journalism. It's just a entertainment. And that's, look, he's sitting down with, and so you take it for what it is. But he was on the sidelines. We know that because the NCAA already, there have been reporting that he was. I know that through my sources that he was on the sideline, and so that's not a question. And so that lie sort of then discredits a lot of other things when he can't remember. Well, a guy who's as sharp as he is, he may be weird and he may be, but he is sharp, right? We know that about him. I mean, so. The game ball thing, I don't have an issue with. I mean, obviously, he had a real knack for deciphering signs, which is not illegal, which is something a lot of teams do. And so that was a talent, and it helped him. And I have no issue with that at all. And obviously, he went too far. He broke the rules, and I think he probably saw better ways to help the program. And how many people knew that within the program is kind of the question at hand. But yeah, the idea that he wasn't there is just BS.
I mean, that's like you said, deciphering signals, not illegal, happens in all sports. It's the way they went about it. And for every Michigan fan or media member that cries, oh, everyone does it. Everyone sends a staffer to a completely random team sidelines to dress up in a costume and cosplay as one of their coaches to steal signals a few weeks before they play their own game like that. I feel like we're being a little disingenuous here, but I leave it to them to just believe their own things because that's what they're served all the time.
Yeah, and I don't, based on the reporting I have, and I'd love to be able to put this out in State Journal, but we have some sourcing standards that Netflix doesn't. But
sure,
I am not sure how much was to help Michigan and how much was to help CMU that night.
Regardless, yeah.
And so, like, I think from what I know, he was there to some degree on CMU's behalf.
Whether he was there for CMU to be a freelance coach or I don't think he burnt his entire notebook when he left. Maybe some of it carries to the Michigan game. And let's all be honest here, too. Not the reason Michigan beat Michigan State this year. I'm not that crazy. But nevertheless, that's just, our little 2 cents on that. We're going to give actually another sport some shine here to end the show here because Michigan State, recently 3-day trip to Spain. They played some really solid games. They lost a tough one against a very tough team. They looked good. But the sports books, and not to make this a gambling segment, shot Michigan State up to the second best favorite to win the Big Ten, only behind UCLA this year. Look, I thought they looked good. I think that's a little bit of an overreaction to vault them. I think it was like 5 or 7 spots up. So what's your take on that? Do you think they looked that good, Graham, where they are going to be a legitimate first or second best team in the Big Ten, or what's your take after the Spain trip?
So the reason I think they moved up in the sportsbook is there's just a lot of unknown, and all of a sudden you had known, you had something, you had evidence, right. you had a team that played and did look okay at times. So I think that's what happened. If somebody else had played, they're just looking for information in this, and they're also thinking, where's the action going to be? Other people are thinking they don't want to lose money on people betting Michigan State because they're a long shot to win the Big Ten. So I think that was a lot of it. I did think they looked pretty good for August before practice really gets rolling. Mm-hmm. In certain ways, I thought the way Cohen Carr finished was tremendous. I've had coaches, not Michigan State coaches, but other coaches say, like, that guy has to be on the floor.
Yeah.
You saw the finishing group against the team from Serbia, the professional team, which is a legitimate, top 32 European club, right? That's a legitimate professional team that would win the Big Ten, and they lost in a 48-minute game, 115-110. And I think that game's good for a couple reasons. One, Michigan State is a roster full of guys who want to play in the NBA, and it's good for them to see that even the guys who are playing in Europe right now are better than you.
Right on.
That's always healthy, sort of in terms of your own perspective and where you need to get to. I thought Jeremy Fears was really good, go back to the closing lineup. The fact that Booker was at the 5, which is something I've suspected could happen. And when they were looking around at what to do at the center position, I thought the flexibility there was something they were thinking about. Because when you start thinking about their best 5 or 6 guys, it may very well include Booker at the 5 and Don Down to get the right guards and wings in there. I thought Kohler was the best center otherwise on the trip, and I don't think it was that close.
Okay.
And I thought Fears was what you needed to see from him because he looked healthy, he looked quick. His best game was the first game, which was a decent team, the way he pushed the ball, a natural guy getting out the ball before. So, yeah, I think there's, Jay Nakin struggled to the last game, and then I thought he was good in some big moments there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's going to be an on-demand scorer the way people sort of think of a go-to guy, and that's what Tyson Walker was. I don't know if they need him to be that. But, so there was nothing that took place where you go, uh-oh. And there were a lot of things where you went, oh, that could work out pretty well. And it was definitely, I think, overall promising.
And just to point out another player too, Jace Richardson. Izzo built his defense before they took off to Spain. I thought his defense looked really solid across the board. So I think he's going to be on the court.
20 minutes played more than 20 minutes in the final game, more than the other freshmen. I mean, he's that I thought was a sign of just sort of where people's heads were at that point.
The loss that they had was the game that inspired me the most because not only, again, top 32 European team, just like you said, but this is the 3rd game in 6 days. And it's not like, they're relaxing. They're doing some sightseeing. They're doing cannonballs off catamarans. And I know, they're young, spry children, basically, and they have all sorts of energy. But, man, that's still a draining trip. And the fact that they hung that close with a team that is that good, I feel pretty high about them. Just, wow, second best in the Big Ten. I was like, I like where your head is at, sports books. I just want to actually see a little bit of the season before we go that far, though. That's just where I was at.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think it's going to be a fun year, though. I do think it was time to turn the page on that last group. I think it'll be a less frustrating year, and that, because obviously AJ Hoggard could be frustrating for a lot of reasons, but even their better players, a guy like Malik Hall was a frustrating player because of style of play, and his shot wasn't always there, and it was whereas the style of player that Xavier Booker is less frustrating to watch, right? Shooter, length, things like that, just or aesthetically pleasing player in that sense. I think that'll be a big thing. They'll be a less frustrating team to watch, and but there is some pressure on this group because Xavier Booker's probably got 1 year, and then he's in the NBA. Frankie Fiddler, 1 year. You've got Jaden Akins, 1 year. Like, you lose those three guys. So the odds that you're going to be better in 2025, 26 doesn't seem that likely. Maybe they keep rolling and but so there is some pressure on this year, I think, to maximize what you have there.
I think you just coined the phrase for Michigan State athletics this upcoming year. It's a less frustrating year. Like, we're just going to have that at Breslin on Spartan Stadium. It's going to be great. That's got a nice ring to it. Sell the Nike t-shirts, baby. Let's go. Folks, that's Graham Couch. You guys already know who he is. Lance State Journal, Couch on the Root podcast. Anything you want to shout out before we go? Let you enjoy the rest of your game week here, Graham.
Not really. We'll have coverage, over the weekend as we always do, and we appreciate people reading us.
Appreciate you as always, Graham. Appreciate the listeners. Appreciate the viewers. Love you all. Take care of yourselves the rest of this week. Go